So I'm just going to hop right into it. So I'm going to start with the first poem in my chapbook, and it is called Where I Come From. I have relatives long gone, women from the old South who never married, who lived in their aprons and their closets. And I think of that Mississippi swelter, that suffocating silence. And so I say, I have a girlfriend. And I say it on Thanksgiving in the kitchen while my aunts do the dishes. And I think of my parents' closed doors, the hushed words behind them, how I never saw a kiss or an I love you between them. And so I tell her I love how she touches me, her gentle hands, the spell of her kiss. And I say I love her until I don't feel so naked, or until even naked feels safe. And I say that hurt my feelings, even when it feels silly. I feel the tension with words until we scratch our way out, and I talk and I talk and I open my mouth because they couldn't, because they can't anymore. So I'm going to get right into the next one. This next poem is, I wrote when my grandfather was sick, and he actually passed away almost 2 years ago exactly. And he was an incredible man, and he was the last person I came out to. And that's what this poem is about. And it's called Granddaddy's Closet. So much had built up to this. My 93-year-old grandfather across from me, and between us, this secret. His first response was a question. Do you think it runs in families? He then told me about his brother who never married, who he always wondered about. After he assured me he thought no differently of me, he asked if I wanted any of his old clothes. My grandfather was always a practical gift giver, made us homemade hangers for Christmas, gave the girl cousins kitchen sponges and the boy cousins pocket knives. But on this day, he brought out a box of his cardigans and sweaters, his flannel shirts. He laid them out on the floor for me to look through, to take whatever I thought I needed. All right. So most of these poems are written very much looking back and remembering. This is one of the only poems in the book that I wrote like very much in the moment. And it's also the oldest poem in the book. I think I like looking back on it because I was writing about coming out. I just didn't know that's what I was about to do. So this is called Why I Cut My Hair, Why I Have Tattoos, Why Most Clothes I Wear Don't Feel Like They Fit. Long title. Because there is no power in a sheep in sheep's clothes, no mystery without the wolf underneath. Because I would rather growl and bark and scrape for every appearance of strength than admit to the disappointment of my bite, to the dullness of my teeth. Because I'll wear my wounds like battle scars from wars I chose to fight, when really you drafted me without so much as a word, and it took years for me to hear the echo of my own silence, to acknowledge the clarity and eloquence of my first no, to remember the nights I can't remember. Because I do not claim the innocence of white fleece or the toughness of claws. I am a nameless creature under all of these layers. I am digging and have yet to hit the skin of me. So most of the poems, though, are me looking back. And this is one of those poems where I look back at this obsession I had, and I'm like, yeah, that was pretty queer. So this is called Hatshepsut. My childhood obsession. Egyptian queen turned pharaoh. When her husband died, she not only took his throne, but his clothes, insisted on being painted with a beard. I drew a picture of her coronation day for history class. Hatshepsut on a carrying chair held on the backs of men, wearing facial hair and eyeliner, everyone bowing to this rebel in a headdress, this temple of unapology. After she died, a man tried to erase all evidence she existed. When they found her sarcophagus in 1903, it was empty. The first time I confessed to having a crush on a girl was in my journal. Hieroglyphics barely legible, a language I refused to speak. There is a girl. I didn't dare call it what it was. Couldn't bring myself to say lesbian. I buried it in my childhood bedroom, pink and so typical, and the boys I'd liked at a distance. They found Hatshepsut in an anonymous tomb, the body identified by a missing tooth, her mouth claiming herself, even in death. Now I use my mouth to kiss my wife, to say lesbian, lesbian, lesbian to strangers, in classrooms, in poems, at my family's dinner table, my body, my own temple of unapology, unburied, and unwilling to be silenced. All right. So I'm a teacher, and I came out as an adult, and while I was sponsoring my school's LGBT club, which I still actually, we met right before this, I had my meeting with them. And yeah, I was closeted while I was the sponsor of this club, which was an interesting experience. But those kids also gave me the courage to come out. So this poem is for them, and it is called GSA. One girl lies and tells her mom she's in a culture club. One girl tells us about both times she came out, the first time as a gay boy. One student gives us a new name and pronoun to call them, but only at club meetings. One made rainbow cupcakes for a bake sale before her parents banned her from attending. One boy wears nail polish and eyeliner and reads us his poetry about boys and manatees. One student gifts us with a lesson on Black activists, on how intersectionality means no one gets left out. One girl wears a suit to prom. One boy hovers at the doorway. One girl wears a gay-themed shirt every day. Her favorite says, "No one knows I'm a lesbian." One girl put up club flyers, even if they get torn down. One boy keeps reminding us that a pride day at school is a bad idea, that people will say things. "I'm just being realistic," he says. But they put on their rainbow attire anyway. I watch them roam the halls from my classroom doorway, marquees of color splashed among the crowd. The day a student asked me in the middle of class if I was gay, I said yes, even though a teacher at a nearby school was fired for being a bride with another bride, even though later a conservative radio station would post my engagement photo online like a wanted poster. Who better to prepare me, to teach me how to live life outside of a closet than the same kids who clap every time I say my wife, who gather around her picture on my desk like it's a holy grail, who are so desperate for heroes, they wear pride flags tied around their necks as capes, become the heroes themselves. I'm just kind of going in order of the book. So the next poem I wrote 4.5 years ago, I guess at this point. I just was really thinking about how certain people, our identities are just politicized, whether that be Black and brown people, whether that be queer people, trans people, just by existing. Your existence is political. And that's something I was really thinking about. So this is called What If Our Love Wasn't? What if our love wasn't a movement? If holding hands in public was not the bravest thing I did today? If introducing you as my wife was not an act of revolution met with equal parts applause and sneers? If Orlando was another random shooting, not bigotry that bloodied the night? Not pictures captioned "Love Wins," and the election was just an election. A morning I didn't even check the news, just kissed you goodbye as you slept, careful not to wake you from a world still soft enough to dream. And I don't normally read this poem, the next one. It's the title poem of the collection, the wrong side of the whole book, Lesbian Fashion Struggles. So this is where I got the title from. And this is really where I got the whole concept for the book from. I'd already written some of the poems that ended up in here, but once I wrote this poem and I looked back on it, I was like, there's something there. I think I can do a whole collection with this. So this is called Lesbian Fashion Struggles. Formal wear is toughest. So suit or dress, so senior prom, binary bursting from every corsage and boutonniere. The day before a wedding, my wife and I tear through our closets, model outfits for each other in hopes that we'll find something that doesn't feel like a costume, but like our own skin. We try on words, butch, femme, androgynous, but language always fails. The children we won't birth line up on the shelf like shoes. The men we won't love hang limp on their hangers in the back. Still, our closets are filled of sleeves empty with possibility extended toward us. All right. I think I can do this one. So if I'm writing a collection about lesbian fashion struggles, I think it's like mandatory that there has to be a poem about. So this is called Ode to Flannel. You rainbow of plaid lined up in my closet, the only good part of winter. I love you in classic lumberjack red, like the old shirt my grandfather gave me, a slight mothball smell, buttons on a different side than I'm used to, fastened all the way up, sleeves rolled midway, ready to chop some wood or shotgun a beer or hold a woman close by a campfire. I also love you tied around my waist like a skirt or flag I wave, a splash of texture with my dark lipstick, all those lines interwoven like fingers laced together under tables, you queen of the lair. Sometimes a light jacket, the perfect transition piece when the first leaf turns gold. You were the only cliche I could claim, hanging in my closet long before I came out of it, before I even knew any of the stereotypes, only that I didn't fit them. So I think a lot of this book for me is about that, like not feeling like I could take up space in the queer community, like being very, straight passing, coming out like as an adult. So I think that's kind of, there's some other things I have about that in here. Let's see, this next one. So this poem means something kind of completely different now that I haven't worn a big chunk of the clothes in my closet in a year, or worn shoes that were not like comfy, shoes for a year. Today, actually, I pulled out some shoes that were like nice, my like booty shoes I like a lot. And it's the first time I've worn them in a year. So anyways, this is called Sometimes I Feel Sorry for the Clothes I Buy. It's about when buying clothes that you never wear. Sometimes I feel sorry for the clothes I buy, but never wear. The ones I double back for and pluck from the rack on impulse, that I smuggle into dressing rooms in my search for something that looks like anyone but me, or who I could be if I was braver, with fewer fucks to give. The ones I take home to never leave my bedroom, Rapunzel's in my tower, the blazer with the tag hanging from its sleeve like a garter that should long be ripped off, the one that turns my black pants into a suit if only I'd let it, the blue tube of lipstick that touches my lips when no one else is around, my secret girl, my bruised lady of the night, the loudmouth jumpsuit tight enough to tell every curve, backless except for strips like guitar strings begging for someone to strum them, the black top that shows a whisper of stomach with slits in the sleeves, the men's button down I fasten all the way up, too snug on my hips, my body too woman in its embrace. These clothes deserve to know the heat of a body, to be worn out, not just used for practice as I finger their fabric. They lie on my bed like French girls saying, don't paint me unless you are going to take me to dinner or a movie or dancing or hell, even a drive. Don't take your picture with me if you're just going to delete it before anyone sees. I dare you. Be this woman you pretend to be. This next poem, I There was one girl, exactly one girl, who was out at my high school when I was growing up. And of course, now I think the numbers are completely different, but during that time, there was one. And to me, this is a poem about how you never know how you're affecting someone else, like how you're inspiring people just by being true to yourself. So this is called The Only Girl Out at My High School. The only girl out at my high school wore a lot of black. Her pants were wide and bedazzled with chains. She had a lip ring, wore a rainbow of bracelets stacked to her elbow. I remember her walking down the hall with two girls, and I wondered if one was her love. I wondered if it was lonely, being a stereo of pride, bass booming, intimidating and loud, and all of the things girls weren't supposed to be in that small Arkansas town where kids debated over religion between classes, said women were supposed to be silent and gay people were going to hell. My parents told me to take a walk, not a stand, and I mostly listened. Slow danced at prom with my own shadow, my face a bouquet of scarlet anytime my name was called in class. I was a violin with the strings plucked out, a symphony of silence, exactly who I was taught to be. She was her own marching band, parading down the halls, and even the religious ones respected her, liked her taste in music. I once sat with her on an empty stage after play practice and watched her go through a playlist on her laptop. I don't remember the songs, but I remember we laughed. I remember the way I felt awkward, but also excited, how I paid attention, like I was hearing an overture, collecting the melodies so someday I could sing them. Okay. The next one I'm gonna do, I used this one when I was a finalist for Write Bloody. I had a video with this one, and so I skip it a lot, but I wanted to read it tonight. So this is called Doing My Mother's Makeup. I try my new lipstick on her. It's fire engine red, sirens across her lips. They look fuller, almost pouty. Well, I need the face to go with it. She gets comfortable in her chair, closes her eyes, and leans into it. I can't believe you're making me do this, she teases, though it was her idea. I can feel the lonely as I dab on concealer, shadow her eyelids, finding parts of me in her face, the green eyes, the sparse brows. Tonight is Christmas Eve, and she will ask my father to pray over the meal, even though they haven't been married for years, even though we never pray. Her wifely duties a phantom itch that resurfaces in his presence. Like the years I played my part, kissed men who wanted me with no thought of if I wanted them. This year is the first time I've brought someone home. My future wife sits in the living room. You both just look so normal, my mom had once said. Which one of you cooks? Who pays when you go out? I tried to explain a world without such rules, but how to explain this unlearning? When I'm done with her makeup, she disappears into her closet, returns with earrings to complete the look, admires for a moment her reflection. I bet no one will notice, she says, then walks back out to the kitchen to finish making dinner. All right. I'm going to do the next one. This is definitely one that I think of when I think of like looking back, kind of a reimagined youth. And I think a lot about how much visibility as a kid, like more queer LGBT visibility in my life, like how that could have changed my life. I think if I'd seen myself somewhere, I would have seen myself sooner, if that makes sense. So, and I'm an English teacher, so I have thoughts about what's left out and all of that. So this is called All of the Closeted Characters from My Childhood March in a Pride Parade. Scout skates with her roller derby team. Tattooed arms burst out of her dyke tank top, her knees bruised like summers blustering through Macomb. Dumbledore hands out flyers that say transgender women are women, smiles over his half-moon spectacles. Mercutio walks on stilts in a crop top and wings, makeup flawless, a tattoo with the initials RM barely visible above his heart. Mulan holds a sign that says non-binary is beautiful, their hair shaved on the side. Nancy Drew drives her blue convertible, come to my window, turned all the way up. I sing along and wave. They are the crew I always wanted. Here, I am the child I could have been. Some days are hard. Friends avoid me. My parents' flustered confusion. But there is also beauty. My first kiss with a girl at summer camp. Our lips two sparks in the night, instead of with the boy who silenced my mouth with his. My first heartbreak, driving by my ex's cry singing Tegan and Sarah, instead of the hollow ache. My heart a match no man could light. My wife is not the first woman I will let myself love. I'm still bruised, but in different ways. Here, the world is filled with possibilities. Here, I see them and waving as they pass, mirrors creating a kaleidoscope of reflections until I can see myself. Okay. The next poem, I think of this as like the twin poem that like it goes along with Granddaddy's Closet. I feel like this is like the bookend, the other half of it. And I tried to make them like similar on the page and everything. So this is called My Grandmother Gives Me Her Approval 9 years after her death. After my grandfather died, we walked through the house turned museum of my grandparents' life together, relics from every drawer and closet pulled out for inspection. My dad called me into the dining room, pointed at the gold-rimmed plates displayed in the glass cabinet next to what was left of their wedding china. The plates had scenes of Victorian women draped across furniture and each other painted in the middle, little cherubs surrounding them with harps. Your aunt looked these up. They're called lesbian plates, my dad said in a hushed voice. I'm sure your grandmother had no idea what she was buying when she got these, but we thought you might want them. And fun fact, these are the lesbian plates. They're on my wall. So I'll do one more. I'm going to end with a love poem. So this poem is called A Toast. Today we drink champagne for breakfast, straight from the bottle. Fry eggs and use the spatula as a microphone. Dance when the song demands to be danced to. You kiss me between laughter and we overcook the eggs. This week I picked a dress for our wedding and one for a funeral. I know it should feel wrong to dance, but nothing feels more necessary than to take another slice of champagne, spin you around and pull you in close, bury my face in your hair, let the toast burn. All right, thank you, y'all.
Thank you so much, Caroline. That was great. I love that you ended with that poem. It's one of my favorites in your book. So thank you so much. And our students read Granddaddy's Closet and talked about it just last night. So thank you for including that one too. I'm going to open it up for some Q&A. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat. We already have a few coming in, but we can definitely take some more. I want to start just by asking you, Caroline, what's the first thing you remember writing that wasn't for school, that was just for you?
I think the first thing and I don't know how old I was, but it was when we first got a computer and I was playing around with like the paint thing, the paint program or whatever, where you could do the text and you could like decorate it. And I remember writing a little poem about a rabbit and then a little short story about a horse. And I made it the background of the computer. That's my first memory. But one of my favorite early things I did was when I was in junior high, I wanted to start an all-girl rock band, but none of us played instruments. But we started writing songs anyways, like me mostly, but like a couple of others, and we would pass around this notebook full of lyrics. And I think that was like my first time like really sharing creative work with people, and getting to feedback. Like people be like, oh, I liked your song, I read it. Like so that's maybe not the earliest, but that's one I really like. That's something we did. I can't find that notebook, but yeah.
That's a great answer. We had a question from one of our students, and it kind of dovetails with a question that I had for you, which was, what inspired you to start writing your poems? Like, how and when did you come to writing as a creative form?
I think junior high, when I was writing those lyrics like that, I really started writing regularly after that. High school, I definitely dug into it even more. And I read The Bell Jar, and that led me to Sylvia Plath. And so for a while, I became a reader and an observer of poetry. I was still writing it some of my own, but I would go to open mics or readings, and I would just sit and I would just watch for a long time. I was just kind of taking it in, writing some stuff on my own. And then I think it was probably my junior year, I started to be more serious about it and made it part of my major. And that's when I got to be in like a college level like workshop. And that, I think that was when it shifted, and I realized like this is something I definitely want to pursue. So
Yeah, great. Could you talk a little bit about your writing process? How do you maintain a writing practice while you are also working full-time as a high school teacher, which both of my parents were teachers before they retired. I know what kind of job that is. It's a challenging job that takes a lot of time. So I'm curious to know how you carve out time for writing.
I'm still, so for writing the book, I had a very specific routine, and every Sunday, that was my day to work on writing. And I would go to the coffee shop and I'd meet a friend there. I had a writing buddy, and we were accountability buddies, and we would spend hours at the coffee shop writing. We didn't even really share a lot of work with each other. We just, again, it was just accountability. And that's how I wrote this book. Definitely. I'm still figuring out a good routine now, because I try to like put music on and like make my own chai latte and like make it feel a little coffee shoppy in here, just so it feels like something different. I'm still working on that, but Sundays, weekends, obviously, like I really take advantage of my weekends for writing. So yeah, I think Sundays, just having, for me, like realistically writing every day is not usually something I can do. I like to try to do things like, I'll say, okay, April, I'm going to do the 30-30 challenge. I'm going to write a poem every day. And that generates a lot of new work and it gets me going, but I can't maintain that. So for me, there are times in between journaling or whatever throughout the week a little bit, but it's the weekends that I really work on my writing.
Awesome. We have a question from another of our students about one of the poems that you read tonight, and she's wondering, was there an occasion for doing your mother's makeup?
There wasn't. It was Christmas Eve. And I was just starting to like, I like wear makeup much, and like lipstick was still kind of a new thing for me. So I was like excited that I had this new lipstick. And so I just kind of sat her down and did it. And yeah, there wasn't really an occasion for it. It was pretty spur of the moment, and that poem was originally half the length that it is now. I left myself and the kind of the occasion completely out of it, and just had the description of putting on the makeup, which I think there's a lot of great poems that are just descriptions of like doing something. But for me, a lot of times I find my poems like come alive when I add in myself. And actually the same thing happened with the GSA poem. I didn't have my story in there at all. And then a revision, eventually I added that in, which is kind of going in a different direction with that question, but.
Nice. That actually leads me into another question. So, I mean, clothes and makeup play such a prominent role in a lot of these poems, and there's such intimate, creative ways of expressing ourselves to the world. I'm wondering if you could talk about their importance to you and to your writing?
Of makeup? Yeah.
And clothes, yeah.
Yeah, all of it. For makeup specifically, I think for a long time, you know, internalized like homophobia, internalized misogyny, I feel like those are kind of twin things. And for a long time, I rejected being feminine because of those two things. Like, so it's interesting, like when I came out and when I started like coming out of all that, it made me more femme, and it made me more like, I don't know, there are people in my life that I like, really powerful femme women who wore this bold in your face makeup, who were feminine and did not apologize for it. And I think that was something I really gravitated toward after I came out, is trying to lean into that and give myself permission to be feminine in that way that is louder, in your face, that kind of thing. And I think with just the whole concept of clothing and makeup and all that, and how it ties into the book, you know, that people talk about when you come out, it's like a second adolescence. And I think in a lot of ways it is, because you are reimagining yourself, like in the world, like how you present yourself, like how you interact with the world, like who you are. And I think for me, that was definitely the case. And so, yeah.
Great. So we got another question in from our chat. So what would you recommend for a beginner poetry writer who has no clue if their own poems are good?
I would recommend like sharing them. Definitely find your crew though. I think one of the most important things in my writing practice is I have writing friends who we swap work. Just knowing like what somebody is taking away from your poem, just like how they describe it, like what their experience of reading your poems, what that is like. I think that's so important to have that feedback, and find those people who kind of get you, and like y'all have that rapport. You know, I think that's really important if you want your poems to be read, if you want them to be welcoming, if you want them to be in some level understood. And of course, like, you know, they might not be understood at exactly how you want them to be, which is fine. But I think that's really important to start with. And I think, like I mentioned, like listening, I had a really long phase of like, I don't know, it's kind of like, you know, when you when you learn a new language, there's that silent period where you're kind of taking in. I feel that kind of with writing too. Like I'm not saying don't write, but I think like reading as much as you can of poetry and going to readings as many as you can, which is hard right now, but I think that's really important, just to surround yourself with it. My dog started barking, but
It's one of the charms of Zoom. Dogs and cats are awesome on Zoom.
Absolutely.
So how did you learn the mechanics of poetry writing? That's another question that came in. I know you went to get your MFA. I'm also curious as to what your experience was like getting an MFA, and if you think that folks can get the kind of experience and feedback that they need to develop outside of that MFA system.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it can definitely be done outside of an MFA. I think when I think about what my MFA gave me, it gave me access to incredible teachers and writers. And you can still get that access, but that's maybe one thing that like is harder to get outside of an MFA in the same way. It gave me community, which you can definitely get outside of an MFA. And of course it gives you deadlines. It gives you like, and for me, that's huge, to have like, okay, every month I've got to have, you know, turn in my packet of poems, or I've got to read this, or I've got to do that. I think you have to find like ways to have, whether it's I'm going to submit, if you're at a point where you want to submit poems, like I'm going to submit 5 poems this month and I'm going to get them ready, or I'm going to send 5 poems to my writing buddy, like or I'm going to go to this contest, I'm going to submit. Those contests are great, you know, because deadlines, because there's a built-in deadline, so it's going to help you with that. So I think that's one way. And of course, like finding your community. I obviously, like some of the people I swap work with, I met in the MFA, but some of them I didn't. I went to writing conferences, and I would make myself talk to people, which was really awkward because I'm an introvert and I'm really awkward. But I would make myself talk to the people I was sitting with at lunch, because a lot of times I go to those things by myself. And I met some really great people who, like some of my favorite like readers, that way. And I think also there's something to be said for not just surrounding yourself with, like, if you write poetry, poets. Like, if you want to be somebody who is read beyond, I mean, obviously with poetry, most of the people who read poems maybe are poets, or at least kind of into that. But if you want to like reach a wider audience, find readers in your life who aren't writers to read your work. I think that's important. My wife's the main one that I get for me. And yeah, I think there are a lot of online workshops. There aren't as many that are, free, but Sundress is doing things all the time. And so is Open Mouth Reading Series, is something out of Arkansas that anybody can go to these. That's one good thing. Eric and I were talking about, like, these things are more accessible, and there are a lot of them that are free, and there are a lot of them that aren't. But I think before I was in the MFA, I was in workshops. I was taking, doing one-on-one courses with poets. Megan Falley, who's the blurb on my book, I did that with her years before I got an MFA. And yeah, I had a little bit of a poetry community here in Little Rock before that too, and we would swap work. And I was doing a lot of open mics, and I actually did like slam for a little bit, but which again gives you a deadline, gives you an audience, and that's a type of feedback that is instant. Just like reading your poems for other people, it's a little harder to convey over not live, where you can see people's faces as much and that kind of thing, or hear if they clap or whatever. But yeah, those are some things I think about. Yeah, I don't think an MFA is absolutely necessary at all.
That's great. Yeah. And I think reading poetry is one of the best ways to learn how to write poetry, right? Like, immerse yourself in it, read it, imitate it at first, and then you learn to find your own voice.
Absolutely.
You mentioned being an introvert. So what's the experience like when you do readings like this to groups of folks?
Well, I will say it's easier doing this on Zoom. It is a little easier in a lot of ways, but I get I always go through a series of like, I'm really nervous beforehand, and then like at moments doing it, I'm like, why am I doing this? Why did I do this to myself? I don't know. It's a very like visible. You're very visible, and I think that's what makes me nervous. But at the same time, I love listening to poets, and like I understand that like there's a lot of value in like hearing poets read their work, and I want to do that too. And I think that that's a skill. It's also a great, like I said, a way to get feedback, and reading poems out loud. I think it's good to be a good reader of poems if you're a poet. Like, it's good to. So I think it's worthwhile. But yeah, I get nervous. I get weird. I stress out. Yes.
You can't tell from this end. I'll just say that.
Well, good.
So something else that comes out as a theme in your book is a kind of complex relationship with family. And I think a lot of us, especially beginning writers, and maybe especially LGBTQ writers, can find it hard to write honestly about complicated family relationships. And I'm wondering how you navigate writing with truthfulness and with love when you're writing about family.
That is such a good question, and it's something I'm very much actively still navigating. But I'll say that I think an approach that I have is to share the work. If it's people who are in your life who you love, and you're knowing that, especially if you know that this work is going to be shared. I like doing my mother's makeup. That was a poem that I sent to my mom, and we had a discussion about it, not just sending it to them and like saying that's it, like, but like actually talking about it, and kind of seeing their feedback, and trying to have like, I've really thought about, especially as this book is out, how tough it would be to have somebody else write about you from their perspective, like, and have other people read that. Like, that would be really terrifying, and like I wouldn't like that. But at the same time, like, it's your story too, and you own those stories. There's that Anne Lamott quote, you own everything that happened to you. And I think that's very true too. So I think it's a hard balance, because something I've definitely found too is you never know. There were lines lines I didn't know would cause any fuss, and they caused a little bit of a fuss, and I didn't know that was going to happen. And I think you kind of have to embrace that, like, once your work is out in the world, or once you share your work with people, like, yeah, you have your intentions, but they're going to have their own interpretations and their own like feelings about it. And I think yeah, just recognizing that other people are like, if other people relate to those kind of tough family things, I think those are stories worth sharing. Yeah, but I guess just still figuring it out, but like keeping in conversation with those people, sharing and being okay with not being understood sometimes. Like sometimes people are not going to understand your intentions. Sometimes people, you know, you can try, but like sometimes I think that happens. And I think it's a hard thing to accept, but yeah, I don't know if that answers that, but
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think it's a process. I think that's a great way of describing it. And two, I think a lot of your poems, and I think we heard it tonight, there's a sense of playfulness, a sense of joy in them, even when the subject matter is quite serious. And I'm wondering if you might tell us a little bit about the role of play or joy in your writing or in your writing process.
yeah, it's interesting because the collection I'm working on right now is missing a lot of that playfulness. Like I feel like this was a little uncharacteristic for me, but I liked it. Like I think because the whole concept was lesbian fashion struggles, it allowed automatically this sense of play. That again, that was new for me. Like to get to write about things that like reimagining and all of that. I think that joy though is always something that I want to center, and I didn't even consciously know I was like centering that much until at, like when I got my MFA, getting comments about like there's just such joy in a lot of these. I think I'm happy that I think also kind of probably subconsciously that play was, again, as you mentioned, like needed to kind of counteract the tougher moments, and just give the range, you know, of the tone, the range in the storytelling. um yeah, I'm trying to get it back. It came a little easier in this collection, and what I'm working on right now, it's not coming as easily. So yeah.
You write a lot about visibility, so I'd like to ask you, what stories do you think we're missing or overlooking as our LGBTQ community evolves? And maybe who are you reading now? Who do you want to lift up and celebrate?
I think always, as a community, lifting up transgender voices, lifting up Black voices, I think is important. And two of those that I've read recently, Danez Smith, Homie. I don't know why I waited so long to read that, but I just finished reading that, and that was so good. I'm reading Wound from the Mouth of a Wound by Torrin A. Greathouse. I'm not quite done with it. I'm kind of savoring it because it's really good. And something else I'm kind of getting into right now is, instead, like those are both kind of like new books and they're pretty celebrated. I'm getting into the history of our community. I feel like for me personally, at least, like there's so many writers, LGBT writers, and honestly just LGBT people in history that I don't know about. And so I'm trying to like re-educate myself. And Headmistress Press has this series called The Collectibles, and they feature lesbian poets of past and present. And two that I found out about this week, and I've got books on the way of these poets: Minnie Bruce Pratt, the book Crimes Against Nature, I think is what it's called. But I've got that coming, and Naomi Raplansky is another one, and her stuff it was kind of hard to find. It was out of print, but I mean, they did a presentation about her, and it was just incredible. All of the like political work that she did in her writing and in her life. And same with Minnie Bruce Pratt. So I think that's something I'm thinking about lately, is in so many areas, I feel like I'm really working to try to like get caught up and re-educate myself about so many things. And yeah, I think just kind of the legacy of the LGBT writing community is something I'm thinking a lot about lately.
Great. We had a question come in about lesbian plates.
Yes.
Someone mentioned that they did a quick web search and couldn't find anything, and they were curious about them and finding out more about them. So what do you know about them? What can you
Down
share?
so I can, because I see that and they like couldn't find it, but I found it online. There's a brand on the back and I don't remember what it is. So let me get it. Okay. It is, oh, I can't tell. Warranted. Oh, I don't remember now. I think I'd asked my aunt like what she Googled for it. I can show it. Oh, it just says Royal China. I don't know. I might have to say like maybe I can get back to y'all about that. But this is what
Okay.
it looks like if you want to see it. That's
Ooh,
one of them.
yeah,
Yeah. So just
that's
some
gorgeous.
women lounging around. Yeah. I don't remember. I hate that I don't remember, but yeah.
Some lost history there.
Yeah, somebody in my family knows. My dad or my aunt will know. It's been on my Google search a few times because I was like, oh, maybe Augerton Weaving Place. That might be it. I honestly don't remember, but that could be it. Um, yeah, I thought there was something on here that showed it. I don't know. I'll have to let you know later.
That's great. So I'd like to wrap up just by asking you, since you teach high school, what do you learn from your students, or what do you learn from younger folks in general?
Oh my goodness. I think um, going back to specifically the LGBT kids in the club that I sponsor, like the way that they and I let's say I see this with all my students, the way they take care of each other, I think is really something I learned. Like there was a transgender student who came out, and so at the next meeting they like had painted him like a transgender flag with his name on it, and they like they surprised me one time with like this little goodie bag and all these sticky. They're just the way they like lift each other up and like take care of each other, I think is something I think about a lot and take note of. Yeah. And also like what visibility means to them. Um, like I had a student who, when she found out that I was gay, she was looking around my desk and everyone was like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm looking for a picture of her wife. Like what, like she wanted to see like the family photo and I didn't have it. And so now I have that on my desk, like always. So.
Wonderful. That's such a good thing to end on. Thank you so much, Caroline, for sharing your work. And I also want to thank everybody who came out tonight to turn out for our very first in our own right guest writer session, including our students. I'll see you on Monday. Next Thursday, we're going to be welcoming Juby Ariola Headley, who is a wonderful writer and author of the poetry collection Original Kink. You can find information on Juby and a link to register on our website, which is creative.pitt.edu. Again, thank you so much, Caroline. It's been such a pleasure, such a delight to have you here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, y'all.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, everyone. And I'm going to wish you a wonderful night. Thanks so much.